Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter and later on our podcast channel. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We've brought you loads of great content over the weekend and there'll be loads more great content coming over the next few months. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by Aaron Stokes as usual for our weekly Q&A session on everything Newcastle United. Sadly, Aaron, we come into the show on the back of Newcastle United losing the Carabao Cup Final against Manchester United. A couple of days on, how are you feeling about that result and Newcastle ultimately not bringing the cup back to Tyneside?
Probably still as gutted as I was Sunday night, to be fair. I don't think I'll be getting it over it anytime soon, but trying to stay positive, and I think, it was a very positive weekend, wasn't it? We had a fantastic time, even though the result, ended how it was. It would have just been the cherry on the cake, but the general consensus has been that there'll be more. They won't be waiting 24 years till the next one. And I think, everybody's in agreement with that. But yeah, just a fantastic weekend overall, I thought.
Yeah, I think that is the general consensus. It's what I said on the podcast, what I said on the video view on our YouTube channel, walking back to the hotel, that, we're not going to have to wait another 24 years to get to a final. And you have to also look back at where Newcastle were this time last year. It's a moment for reflection. But actually, a couple of days on, my train of thought shifted slightly. And I think there was a moment to look back and say, well, we were here, we were battling relegation, battling for survival. So, to get to a final is an amazing achievement in such a short space of time. But you now have to start looking forward. We've looked back, we've done that. That's enough. The top teams don't spend time looking back. They spend time looking forward. I just think, the next time Newcastle United get to an FA Cup final or a League Cup final, a final of a major trophy, it was a big occasion, a special occasion this time around. But next time, it has to be routine. It has to be the norm, and that hopefully it does become that. But I think the time is probably now past to be looking back, because I don't think that will help anybody, especially in future finals.
Yeah, I do agree with that to an extent. I think everybody knows that they were sort of underdogs going into the game. I don't think there was that much in it between the two teams, but we all knew the two varying runs of form going into it. Everybody knows, how the game went. It was just, they were caught with two sucker punches, 6 minutes apart. So yeah, I think you do have to remember where this team's came from in the last couple of months. You do got to remember that a lot of these players, have been with the club since they were in the Championship and things like that. It was a fantastic achievement to even get there. I think until this squad gets better, I think until there's more investment, I think until there's more depth, just reaching a final would be a good achievement. I don't think you can look too far ahead with this current crop of players.
You can't, but I just wonder if now we reflect on reflecting back to when Newcastle were this time last year. I think it seemed for some, and I'm sure I was guilty of this at parts of the weekend, like we were grateful to be at Wembley, and given the 14 years of hurt with Mike Ashley and what went before as well, the 10 years previously, we had European nights under Sir Bobby Robson, but in Newcastle, last being in a final back in 99, it seemed at points like, yeah, we should be grateful. Well, then that probably on reflection wasn't a helpful mentality to have.
But could they have had any other mentality? Like, you can't deny the facts, and that the facts are they haven't been there for 25 years. Some of the fans that were in the stands on Sunday evening weren't even born the last time Newcastle got to a semi-final, never mind a final. So I don't think the mentality was wrong. I think it was just natural to feel like that. Manchester United have, that trophy drought that lasted all of about 5 minutes. Newcastle United, of course, when they go into a different final, different mindset. So I get your point about going forward, and next time it needs to be different, and there needs to be sort of this mentality that they belong there. But I don't think you can. I don't think it's a surprise that everybody, including ourselves, probably went down there feeling grateful, as you say.
I mean, it was a fantastic weekend, and when I say it becomes the norm, it becomes the routine. The really promising thing is that you fully expect it to become that. I mean, we heard Amanda Staveley yesterday on Talk Sports saying Newcastle will win everything under the sun. So the owners, or at least Man Utd, have got this real ambition to make sure that when Newcastle go to Wembley, it isn't once in a generation.
Yeah, look, I think nobody really. Yes, it's ambitious, but nobody really doubts Staveley when she says that. You do believe that there will be a big sort of injection of cash in the summer. There will be more, better quality players brought in. And you believe her when she says that. She and the board generally do believe that they're going to go on to win things. Obviously, it's going to take time. I think we saw again on Sunday, it was a reminder of the gulf that, the big six. Yes, Newcastle are sort of up there fighting with them this season, but to do that on a consistent basis, they need, a mountain more of investment. So very positive. I thought it was a very good interview from Staveley, even if it was, very ambitious. But fans want to hear it. Fans believe her. So yeah, hopefully it's the start of, a period where they can start gradually getting better.
How important was it that Yasser Al-Romani was at Wembley for the final, and he gets to see, and like he did maybe the week before against Liverpool, he gets to see where Newcastle United are, and it might help shape the plans going forward alongside Dan Ashworth and Eddie Howe going forward in the next couple of windows. Just how important was it that he gets to see that in person, and he's not reading it, off a WhatsApp message, or he's not reading it from a report someone's put together. He's seen it with his own eyes.
Yeah, massively important. I mean, he's obviously been a handful of games at St James's Park and seen the atmosphere. It was obviously would have been very, very exciting for him personally to be there Sunday. And if I'm completely honest, I think the manner of the performance, probably did impress him. Yes, Newcastle United weren't at their very best, and yes, they probably could have played all night and not scored, but they didn't let their heads drop. They kept going, and I think for him personally, that'll have been very, very good to see, combined with what we saw in the stands, and obviously sitting next to Staveley and Murdad all game. I think it would have just been a very, very positive experience for him. And Eddie Howe did say after in the press conference that he'd had a very brief chat with Yasser when he went up to collect his medal, and it was all very positive. So it can only be a good thing, really.
And we mentioned, a lot of people in the comments mentioned about squad depth and what have you. It was quite something to see the players that they could bring off the bench. Roger makes a point here that Man United squad is worth approximately £300 million more than Newcastle's. They had players that they could bring off the likes of bring off the bench, the likes of Maguire, McTominay, where they could really change the tactics of the game. If they want to shut up shop, they can do that. If they want to throw on another attacker who's got the real quality to change the game, they can do that as well. Newcastle, and for all, Jacob Murphy did really well when he came off the bench. Isak, for me, man of the match from a Newcastle point of view. They haven't got that depth, and it was probably another reminder just potentially where they fell down in January in the transfer window and where they need to go in the summer.
Yeah, they're looking light in a few areas of the pitch. There's no secret around that. If they manage to hold on to a European place this season, they're going to need a massive overhaul in the summer, because you're probably going to need 6-7 players, I think, brought in different positions. One, to improve the quality of the starting 11, and two, to make sure you've got decent options coming off the bench. Now, I think in time, maybe the likes of Longstaff and Miggy and Cher will become those players that come off the bench. A few others maybe as well. But yeah, you touched on it there. Jadon Sancho and Harry Maguire. I think they cost about 160 million between them. They're coming off the bench. Sabitza's obviously on loan, but he's from Bayern Munich. They're bringing on fantastic players, and it was always going to be the game changer. And although it didn't prove to be, because Man United were already comfortably 2-0 up, it did just help them see out the game at the end.
When you look back now, is there a little bit of frustration, perhaps, that Newcastle, weren't beaten by an amazing moment of quality? They weren't beaten because they were really, really poor. They were beaten probably because they just didn't go up to the level that was required. I thought they were kind of just average, didn't do anything bad. They necessarily didn't do anything brilliant within the game. And I think you sit here now and it really seems like a missed opportunity, because there were moments where you thought, if they can just get, in between them, around the back of them, if St. Maximin can just find that end product, Newcastle could get a goal here. And I know De Gea had 1 or 2 saves to make, but on a whole, now I look back, I just think it's a real missed opportunity, because they just didn't seize it.
Yeah, I think the manner of the performance was good. I think the way they responded at 2-0 down was really good. I think, Manchester United's game plan was obviously just to give them the ball and sort of try and break on the counter, but I thought Newcastle gave it a good go. I just think, did they ever really, really look like scoring? I can't really say they did. Obviously, they had Jacob Murphy's shot at the end that went wide, Maxie's chance in the first half, Burns' header in the first half. Apart from that, am I missing any big chances? I feel like De Gea hardly had to make a save. I think Manchester United did defend very well, but I just think in the final third at the moment, and it wasn't just Sunday, it's been the last couple of weeks, they just look like they're running a bit out of ideas. I think teams have worked out how to defend against them. And I just think, as I said earlier in the pod, I think it was one of there where they probably could have played on for another 45 minutes and probably not scored. So, again, a lot of that is down to Manchester United, the quality they've got, the way they defended. I mean, Martinez and Varane were fantastic. Casemiro offers so much support in front of the back four as well. So it's a missed opportunity in the sense that they've got to a final to a one-off game. If Maxi had taken that chance, it's a different game. But I don't think, I'm not really sure what much more Newcastle could have done. I thought that was probably them playing close to what their best is at the minute in terms of their current form. Man United, you felt like they could go up another 2 levels if they really wanted to.
I think there's a couple of elements, isn't it? Like you say, clubs have worked out how best to nullify the threat of Newcastle. I mean, if you'd said to me before this game, Newcastle would have had 61% possession in a Wembley final, would have had 347 accurate passes. Man United had just 282 passes of the entire game, 187 accurate. Newcastle had a lot of the ball, but they're not necessarily at the stage in their development where they're comfortable, I don't think, with that. Usually early in the season, it was they'll get the ball, hit teams on the counter, whereas it was Man United that set off. And Man United were quite happy allowing the defence just to pass it around themselves. They weren't pressing them. And I think Newcastle have really struggled recently to get into that mindset where actually we're going to have to try and dominate now because they've got the pacey wingers, haven't they? They've got the pace in midfield to hit teams on the counter. But when they're faced with having to take control of the game, it's not quite there. I guess it's another tip to where they need to maybe go in the summer transfer market.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I also think another big point is that they're not used to chasing games this season. Liverpool on Saturday, they were 2-0 down, they had to chase. Chef Wed in the FA Cup, they had to chase. Apart from that, they haven't lost any other games apart from Liverpool and Anfield, where they only actually went behind in the 98th minute, obviously after the first 2 goals. So this Newcastle United team are used to getting the first goal or, leading and then defending that league. I don't think they look comfortable when actually they're chasing the game. And I think we saw that at Liverpool. Yes, it was another spirited performance. It's good to see that they're not letting their heads drop, even against, the big 6 teams that are going 2 goals down. But again, you just don't look at this team and feel like they're confident they're going to get back into it. Like I say, I feel like for all their possession, for all, the amount of movement they had in the final third on Sunday, you never really felt like they were going to be able to overturn the tide. So things to work on, City on Saturday, you probably couldn't pick a worse game to go into after a cup final defeat, but fully focused on the Premier League now. If they can start getting back to winning ways and sort of getting the season back on track, great, but it's just not working in attack for some reason.
It's just not clicked, has it? And I think, again, we've spoken about this so many times over the last few weeks. The clinical edge in front of goal is just not there. You need to take your chances when they come your way. Okay, you can't maybe compensate for when De Gea pulls off a fantastic save, but on the whole, you're not creating enough chances, and the chances you are creating, you're not putting them away. Man United did exactly that. They took their chances, and no one was a wicked deflection. The other one, you can definitely say, was bad defending from Newcastle, but the point being is that they took their chances, and that's why they took the cup back. It was interesting. We'll hear from Eddie Howe in a moment, but it was interesting in his press conference where he kind of said it's the same issues which he's been trying to deal with over the last few weeks, i.e. not being clinical in those big moments. That's what he said. We weren't clinical enough, and the game is decided on big moments. How does he fix it? Because we are sitting here. Eddie Howe was sat there in that press conference and said, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he knows this has been an issue for probably since the turn of the year, really.
Yeah, if I'm completely honest, I don't think he knows his best three attackers. I think you could probably ask 10 Newcastle United fans on the street who they think is going to start in those three positions on Saturday, and you'd probably get 4 or 5 different answers. Is he going to stick with Maxi on the left? Is he going to keep persistent with Callum Wilson even though he doesn't look right? Does Miggy keep his place in the team even if he's not performing? You've got Willock to come back. You've got Isak. Where on earth does he want to play Isak? Does he want to play him as a 10? Does he want to play him as a 9? Does he want to stick him on the wing? You feel like with Isak, every week he's playing in a different position. Yes, I know he's played that number 10 role a couple of times off Callum Wilson, but I'm still not sure where his actually best positions. I do agree with you that he was a bright spot off the bench. He did look like he wanted to make things happen. So I think that there is a problem that lies there, and that is that there isn't a settled front three that are playing together every week, building partnerships, building relationships. And Eddie Howe hasn't really had this problem early in the season because Maxi wasn't fit, Isak wasn't fit, Miggy was absolutely flying. So interesting to see the next couple of weeks if any of them can step up or if they can sort of find a way to gel together. But I mean, who starts on Saturday? I couldn't tell you. And I think if me and you sat here now and say it, I think it'll be different.
I think it'll be Wilson. Yeah, I think it should be Isak if you're asking me. I think based on what we saw on Sunday, it should be Isak, but I think he'll stick with Wilson. I think Eddie Howe seems to be one of those managers who he doesn't really like to change it until he really, really has to. I think he likes to think, form is temporary, class is permanent, and that Wilson will grab a goal. And he said in the press conference that Callum on his last start scored, and that swayed his decision. Now he did say Isak played well, but it was because Callum scored on his last start, which was interesting. Then he did also say he thought the two played well together. So maybe we could even see both of them in the side going forward from the start.
Yeah, potentially. It would probably just be a system change, which he hasn't been, too reluctant to do this season. It would probably mean Longstaff drops out and we see what we saw in the second half on Sunday. But then again, as I've just mentioned, you've got Joe Willock to come back. You've got Anthony Gordon to come back, which I think, a lot of us had sort of forgotten. He's going to be fighting and trying to get in this team. I would like to see Maxi and Isak start together with Isak in the number 9 position, because they do seem to have quite a good partnership together. They seem to enjoy playing together. But honestly, I don't know who will start on Saturday. But I don't know. I'm not sure if he got it wrong on Sunday. I think he might have. I get why he started Wilson, but I don't know. He just for whatever reason doesn't seem to have been able to shake whatever's plagued him since the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean he doesn't look the same player, and I don't think he did anything to justify his start on Sunday. Do not get me wrong at all. Newcastle didn't lose that final because of Callum Wilson.
No, of course not.
But they also didn't win it, because of Callum Wilson. He just doesn't look the player he was. Whether it's this illness that he had as well after the World Cup, which he's still not been able to shake off. Then he picks up that hamstring injury. But there was a moment in the second half when the ball's played into his feet. If he turns the defender, he's pretty much got a free run in the box. But instead, he flicks it to his left towards Almiron, and it was a wasteful pass. And Man Utd got the ball and went up the field. And you just think the Callum Wilson 4 or 5 months ago is getting that ball, he's trapping that ball, he's turning and he's running. And there's just something, because I don't think he's a confidence player. It's not about confidence. I don't know what it is, but Newcastle are suffering it without him on form because, on his day, he's a worthy striker of that black and white number 9. Eddie Howe, fingers crossed, can find that remedy because without him, Newcastle are much worse off.
Yeah, look, Howe's obviously seen something on the training pitch that is making him start Wilson. But yeah, I think we've just touched on that. I think if this was the Wilson before the World Cup, then Newcastle would have stood a much greater chance. But now, he's not just battling Chris Wood, he's battling Alexander Isak, and Isak does look capable of playing in that position. But look, one positive I will say about all this is that Howe's got options now. He has got all these players fit for the first time with the inclusion of Gordon. They're going to have options to bring off the bench, which, we've just obviously talked about how crucial it was for Manchester United. So there is positives to take. I don't want to be too negative, but I just think Yeah, I just think some of the manner of the performances up front and how stale it looked and stuff, I just think, something does need to be changed in the weeks going forward.
Yeah, don't again get us wrong. Very proud of the lads for getting to the final. And like I say, it wasn't a bad
It was a
performance.
good performance. It just
It just lacked, it lacked really the quality of an elite team. Really, that Man United, for all their bad form, are still probably closer to that bracket than Newcastle United are because of that. Like we say, that squad depth was something else. But yeah, again, it's you sit here and you will go on a roller coaster of emotions, won't you? Because it is a final, first one in 24 years, and I don't know. Would you rather be sitting here thinking, oh, I mean, that was a quality goal, a 30-yard strike, or Newcastle played really badly, or would you rather be sitting here saying, right, they played okay, 6 minutes of poor defending, and we look to the next one?
no. I think I'm much happier sitting here, but knowing that they've given it a very good go. I think there was just sort of a collective, punch in the gut when that second goal went in and the wind got taken out of the players and the fans and even us in the press box. And obviously, when half time was approaching, you thought, well, that's it. But actually, in the second half, they did have spells where you thought, they're giving this a good go. It's incredibly hard when you've got, as I've said, Varane, Casemiro, who have won 9 Champions Leagues. But I think, what was it now, 17 out of Casemiro's last 18 finals he's won.
Top quality players.
9 in a row. De Gea, Rashford, Luke Shaw, all, experienced final players. When you look at that Newcastle United team, Kieran Trippier is one of them. Yes, they've got some fantastic players, but anything like Manchester United's experience in terms of big games and finals. So I'm glad that they give it a go. They did not get, outclassed by any means. I didn't actually think Manchester United played that well.
No.
Just very, very, very good on the counter, very good at, just shoring up that defence.
I think what the main frustration is that they weren't too far off Manchester United, and I think that's the frustrating thing. Like, it's a bit like if you get knocked out in the second leg of the semi-final after going 3-0 up in the first leg, you're so close to it. And they weren't that far behind, they just couldn't get up to the next level, which was really, really frustrating. Disappointing. But as we see, the lads did very well to get there. Let's talk about the midfield. I want to first off talk about the decision to take Sean Longstaff off. Now, if we're talking about elite mentality, then I think you look at that decision from Eddie Howe. He was asked about it in his press conference, and he said, no, it was a tactical decision. I just felt we didn't have any time to waste. Off comes Sean Longstaff, biggest game of his career. Geordie Toon boyhood fan. And Eddie Howe, no room for sentiment, just takes him off, throws Isak on to try and win the game. That is the kind of brutality we need from Eddie Howe, isn't it? Because I think he's got this persona, being like maybe, too nice. I think in certain quarters, you can maybe see it with the Wilson and the sentiment kind of there. But he showed on Sunday with that decision that he takes no prisoners.
Yeah, it was, as you say, brutal decision. Obviously, Longstaff and Byrne going into it had the the Geordie element of being local lads playing for their team, but Eddie Howe knew it was right for the team, and actually it did work because Longstaff had a relatively quiet half by his standards. Isak instantly came on, was driving at the defence. He was trying to make things happen. He looked very, very sharp, I thought. So yeah, I mean, 2 weeks and he's had 2 brutal decisions to make. Elliot Anderson, firstly on his Premier League debut, and now Longstaff in a final. So I don't think Eddie Howe's too nice. I know what you mean. There is a sort of, that sort of aura about him of being a very, very nice man. But I think when he does have to make the tough decisions, he has. And, these decisions will only get tougher when the stakes get higher. And if they're in Europe next season, no room for sentiment at all. So, yeah, it was a good decision, I thought.
Yeah, definitely. Because as we've mentioned there, Isak probably looked like the only man that could get Newcastle back into the game. We'll talk about Joe Linton first off, because for me, I felt, he just had another really good game. There was a moment in the first opening 6 minutes when he twice turned the Manchester midfield like there was no one there. He took 3 players out of the game with a turn. He's strong. He's good on the ball. Okay, he lost his head towards the end of the first half, and he probably needed to be calmed down in the dressing room. But he came out and he handled himself really well, because one of our colleagues turned to me and said, he could get sent off here because you could see they were just starting to lose a bit of focus. But obviously, whatever was said in the dressing room worked out in terms of the players staying on the pitch and worked out, of course, in terms of the result. But I felt Joe Linton again just continues to impress. And we've said, haven't we, that it's going to have to end one day. That his form's going to have to end. Miggy's form's dropped off. Trippier's form has dropped off. Wilson's form has dropped off. But one man who keeps on performing is Joe Linton, and just utterly impressive yet again.
Yeah, he was very good. I thought he was, one of the few Newcastle players that really stood out of having a good game. He dealt with Casemiro very well. There was a very good moment in the second half where Anthony was sort of doing his flicks on the touchline. Joe Linton just comes over and says, you're not going to take the mickey out of us in a cup final. So he is starting to become this sort of consistent figure where every single week you're not giving him lower than 7 or an 8, in your own sort of your ratings. So yeah, very, very good. I thought Bruno was very good, especially first half at trying to just drive the team forward. As I feel
different class, Bruno.
I feel like I say it every week, but Newcastle just look like just a completely, it's like night and day when he plays, and when he doesn't play, he's just absolutely fantastic.
But is there an issue there, because we saw him go over his ankle and it looked, it's one of those when you watched it on the replay, you grimaced yourself, you felt it. It looked very similar to the one against, go on, remind me who did it, but
I can't remember who it was.
You know what, Eddie Howe couldn't remember either in his own press conference, so excuses, but the one that he did a few weeks back, and it looked painful, and then he continued for, what was it, 10-15 minutes, so he was hobbling about, he looked in discomfort, he left the stadium with a bit of a limp, and I think it just shows you the reliance on him. I know it's a final, you need your best players on the pitch, but you do wonder now whether you'll play against Manchester City.
Yeah, look, we knew it in January, we knew at the end of January, we knew going into February, we knew going into this game that they're light in midfield more than most positions. That Shelvey decision just keeps coming back to bite them. But I think the fact he played on after that initial ankle injury is promising. I think Howe maybe took him off as a little bit of precaution as he tried to change the game at the end. The players are back in training probably now as we speak, so hopefully, there's good news from the camp and he's back training. But
just reaffirms, doesn't it? Because if that's Manchester United, they take him off, they bring Sancho on, or they bring whoever on. Whereas it's Newcastle, and again, no disrespect to the players on the bench, but it's it's Jacob Murphy or it's an Elliot Anderson, and they're not game changers, are they? And I think it maybe again just shows you, unfortunately, not getting in that centre midfielder in January. It's maybe going to come at a cost now, especially now like they've let Shelvey go. Obviously, you couldn't predict what was going to come down the line, but they are definitely lacking in that midfield.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we saw the 3 games before the final where Bruno was suspended, how different the team looks as a whole. If Bruno, let's just say, touch wood here, not to tempt fate, but if he suffers an injury, misses a couple of weeks, and Joe Linton gets a 3-game ban, then it's Longstaff, Willock, and Elliot Anderson starting, and who comes off the bench? They are, just a couple of sort of scenarios away from being extremely short. But look, this is nothing new. We knew this was going to happen. Eddie Howe will continue to say he feels he did the right thing with John Joe Shelvey, not standing in the players' way of wanting to play football. I certainly think Shelvey and Darlow are probably thinking, should we not have just waited 6 more months? Because they probably both would have been involved at Wembley. So, yeah. But look, big summer ahead to make sure that they sort of right the wrongs of January, I think.
Roger says Murphy did very well when he came on. And I agree with you. Yeah, I think he did do very well. That wasn't me having a go at his performance. But what I'm saying is there's a difference in bringing Jacob Murphy off the bench, and there's a difference in bringing Sancho off the bench, is the point I'm making. No disrespect against Jacob. But I did actually think Murphy did really well. Again, I think towards the final 10 minutes, Newcastle were in that kind of lull, weren't they? Trying their best, but you knew they were never going to get back into it. And he just seemed, along with Isak, one of those players who was just trying to drive it forward. He had a shot, and that was one of the only really efforts on goal they had in the second half. And it narrowly went wide. He then made some really important interceptions as Man United were pushing for the third goal. So I don't think he's done his chances of maybe even starting in the coming weeks any harm at all. Eddie Howe obviously loves him. I think the most used substitute Eddie Howe's had at Newcastle this season. But yeah, I thought Jacob Murphy did very well when he came off the bench. Alan St-Maximin carried a threat, but we hope that with the big stage in front of him, all the cameras, all the lights, we just didn't get that action.
If I'm completely honest, I think Maxi had a good game. I think he was by far and away their biggest threat. I think the only sort of negative around the performance was maybe the final ball, the killer decision, the maybe just holding on to the ball for 2 or 3 touches too long, more than once. But look, on another day, I mean, that was a fantastic save from De Gea, and he did fantastically well even get in that position. And he was given Dalot in the first half and Wan-Bissaka in the second half a really hard time. But I just think, he's still probably trying to find full fitness. He's been back in the team, but he's probably still trying to get back up to speed. I think if that had been the Maxi of the start of the season when he was, consistently starting games, it might have been a different outcome. But I think, just like Liverpool last week, I don't think he's done himself any favours. Be very, very surprised if he didn't start on Saturday.
Yeah, but well, it's that Man City game. You could go in there, give Kyle Walker another few nightmares. Didn't quite happen for Miggy. His form is tailed off. Newcastle need his goals. Again, like Maxi, he tried, he worked his socks off, but more running sideways than forward, perhaps.
Yeah, not too much to say about Miggy other than that. I thought it was the Miggy of old. And I'm not talking old as in start of the season. I'm talking of Miggy of the last 2 or 3 years. And I think this is the problem that we've all been sort of worried about. Even when he was, the goals were flying in every time he touched the ball, he was scoring. We were always worried it was going to sort of revert to type. And I hate to say it because I love Miggy. It's great that he signed UG. I think he's a wonderful asset to have at the club. But I just think Newcastle, if they really want to start to compete on a regular basis, they need someone who's going to play in that right midfield position or that right forward position and just every week be on it. Real experience. And I just think with Miggy, very good in fits and spells, he would be a fantastic option off the bench for his graft and his pace. But I just think week in, week out, it's just not enough there.
I hear you when you say that, and I agree. So then I will take what you've said and I'll say, well, does the same apply to Alan St-Maximin as well?
Yeah, it does. And I'm not saying Miggy's alone in this. I think it applies to a few players. But I think we see more from Maxi overall than we see from Miggy. And I know that's probably not, a lot of people say, well, this season Miggy's been flying. But I just think more times than not when Maxi plays, he will produce something. Miggy, you never know from 1 week to the other where he's going to score a brace or whether he's going to have a quiet one. So, as I say, really like Miggy. He just had an off day Sunday, and I just think the last couple of weeks we've started to, see that old, and I'd love him to refine that form.
Malcolm says we have no competition for Miggy's place, but hopefully maybe Gordon. I know he tends to play on the left, maybe he can offer that. We've got Coiner Frey saying Maxi was better than Miggy in the final. Darren says he would push Joelinton back into midfield. He would start with Isak, St-Maximin, Gordon against City and drop in Wilson. We've got people talking about Wilson as well, saying that Wilson actually needs to be a sub. Here we are, Truls saying Wilson needs to be a sub from now on. He's scored 1 goal in 15 games, and that's not good enough in their opinion. Darren says, picking on Miggy now, are we? Worth his place for work rate alone. Hey, look, I'm still the chairman of the Miggy fan club, and I think the thing about Sunday was, and it's refreshing in a way that we're not sitting here saying someone had a horrendous game and someone made a mistake and what have you. The reason they didn't win the final was because collectively they weren't good enough. They just, again, in my opinion, were just average. It needed a hero to step up. They didn't get it, but you're looking for the positives. At least you can say collectively as a team, there were they were okay, and as an individual, no one made a mistake. No one's going to bed thinking, I didn't play very well there. Yes, they should have done better with that cross for the first goal. But again, that's a unit, isn't that? So that's a mistake of the defence. And I just want to ask you quickly about that. we seem to be sitting here time and time again talking about the same kind of goals being conceded. Fabian Schär, he did have a bang of heads. Maybe he shouldn't even been on the pitch. But Casemiro just wanted that ball more, didn't he?
Yeah, and I think it's become a sort of a regular occurrence the last couple of weeks. They're conceding from set pieces all of a sudden when they never used to. Obviously, we had the corner at Bournemouth, the corner at West Ham, the free kick on Sunday. For whatever reason, that sort of solidity they had from set pieces earlier in the season just seems to have gone. They're also now not scoring from set pieces at the other end either, which is just a recipe for disaster. So we haven't really spoken about the defence, but I thought the defence was on the whole all right.
I thought they kept Marcus Rashford actually really, really quiet. I think, you had this debate, didn't we? But actually, I thought he looked frustrated even when they were 2-0 up. And we were really worried about Marcus Rashford, but I don't think they gave him too much space. There was a great save by Loris Karius, who we'll talk about in a brief moment. But other than really that effort, and maybe one other, I think in the first half when he managed to run at the defence, he didn't really do too much. And I think as he was the main threat that we were all worried about, Newcastle can take that as a positive that they managed to keep probably the informed player in the Premier League quiet.
But did they though? Because he scored.
Well,
he scored a second.
It was a deflection.
So,
it was a deflection, wasn't it? It was going wide. He's somehow been rewarded the.
Was that? I think that was going in.
It's been rewarded him. Yeah, I did forget that he was responsible for Botman's own goal. But honestly, I don't think he was the threat we were worried about. I think a few brief moments here or there.
Yeah, I personally thought he caught Trippier out a couple of times. One for the second goal. He drew the foul for the first goal from Bruno, and obviously Karius made a very good save from him. So I actually thought he had a really good game. He is the Premier League's most informed player, as you rightly say. And if I'm completely honest, as I said earlier, I think Manchester United could, if they wanted to, have lifted that game another level. Casemiro, Rashford, they all could have lifted it. It was pretty much cruise control for most of that second half.
But then is that is that not the frustration that so you essentially saying Man United won that without getting out of first gear?
I think Manchester United went 2 goals up. I think even before Manchester United went 2 goals up, they were more than happy to let Newcastle United have the ball. I think if Newcastle had taken one of those chances and scored, Manchester United would have been straight back on it. There was times Weghorst got in behind. Fernandes really should have scored at the very end. Rashford had a very good chance as well as the goal he scored. I think Manchester United on another day, if there'd been a closer game, they would have put the afterburners on. I just thought that second half, you've touched on it there, 61% possession for Newcastle, and yet it never really felt like Newcastle United were going to score.
So it goes back to that point then that teams have worked Newcastle United out. Newcastle are going to have to start dominating games. They're going to have to start doing more with the ball. So what is Eddie Howe doing in training, do you think? Do you think he's trying in large to stick to that counter-attacking approach, or do you think he will have changed tact this week, for example? Again, it's an interesting one, because if you look at it, just the teams that are playing, Newcastle versus Manchester United in the final, you would say, well, Man United surely going to have more of the ball. And you would say again this weekend against City, surely Man City can have more of the ball. But it could work out the same way. City just say, right, come on, then you come on to us, and we'll hit you on the counter, because goodness knows they've got the players to do that. But how is he setting up his teams now in an attacking sense? Is he spending the day saying, well, look, work from the back, you've got the ball, let's make it work? Was he sticking with what was tried and tested in the early part of the season?
I think they need to try and find a way to, as you said, not only dominate games, but actually make that pay, make the possession pay as it was at the start of the season. I think going into this game against Manchester City, they'll probably very much be setting up to play counter-attacking football. I can't see Manchester City letting any team dominate the ball at the Etihad Stadium, which will maybe play into Newcastle United's strength if you're playing Maxi, if you're playing Isak, who have got the pace to spring a counter. But they need to start doing more with it.
With that, and we will have our usual preview with John Gibson later in the week, so we'll not dwell too much on the forthcoming game. But we talked about St. Maximin starting in the final. And the reason I was all for it was because, Man United have some excellent players, but I wasn't. I mean, Anthony's clearly a very good player, but I wasn't, being kept up at night about it. Whereas Man City players who could potentially play against Dan Burn, I am a little bit, and I think it's this. You get a point against Manchester City, you see it. That's a good result. The final's one game of football. You see it at Maxi. Look, Dan Burn's going to be exposed. You make sure that you're doing your job going forward, and you get us the goal, you get us the assist. It's a little bit different in the league. You might go down to the Etihad and say, well, look, we'll try and go for a point here. But to do that, Joe Linton or whoever is going to start on the left is really effectively going to be playing alongside Dan Burn, maybe try and keep whether it be Grealish or Mahrez quiet.
But I think we've seen that in recent weeks, and I think it works really well. And we saw it on Sunday. Joe Linton does sort of play as a de facto left midfielder / left wing back at times because he knows he's got to do the defensive work. And I thought again on Sunday, there was times in the second half where he was the man to stop Anthony rather than Burn. I just think if you are going to go to Manchester City and play counter-attacking football, it's probably Maxi that you'd want leading those counter-attacks purely because of how he can run at players. And, him in transition is probably the player you want. Gordon, I mean, I don't think Gordon will start, but he's another who off the bench could prove effective in that role. So, and again, I thought Maxi was actually one of the better players Sunday, obviously, despite his sort of lack of end product. I thought he was one that was actually really trying to make things happen. And I think as you've touched on, what he did to Kyle Walker earlier this season, there's no reason that he can't do that again on Saturday.
Stuart Thompson says, my target needs to come back in the team for Dan Burn.
It is. I've seen a lot of people saying that, and I understand why. Dan Burn has been fantastic. He's been, a revelation at left back. You probably couldn't meet a nicer man as well. But just think going forward, does he offer enough? We've seen it obviously at times even on Sunday. He was trying to get in the box, but I just think, you never see, Kieran Trippier. He's created more chances than any player in the league, bar De Bruyne this season. Newcastle don't have that down the left. It's purely, him overlapping Almiron. And I think it's easy to forget how well Target played in that role back end of last season. So whether Howe will do it, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be completely against it if he did.
Well, it's funny you mentioned there about Trippier creating chances, because we spoke about this, didn't we, after the final whistle, and we've been speaking about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but old angry gamer here said, Trips pass to Miggy. Miggy gets in a cross position, turns his back, passes back to Trips for Bruno. Wasted opportunity. Same on the left wing. Players in crossing positions but don't cross instead of passing back. And that has been the story for the last month, 6 weeks or so. And it was evident on Sunday in the final, even with 5 or 10 minutes to go, there was one moment where Trippier is on the edge of the box and he just doesn't get the ball in. Dan Burn is effectively playing as a left winger because the time was running out, and he was down that end. You've got Isak, you've got Callum Wilson. Get the ball in the box. Trippier has gotten the most crosses in the Premier League this season, but I would love to know how many he's had of late. I think I said that in the last. I'll have to go and check it out. But they just seem a little bit hesitant to get the ball in the box. And I mean, why? First of all, do you agree?
To an extent, I do still think Trippier is producing going forward. I know it's maybe not resulting in goals, but I think he's still looking a threat. But I think, me and you have noticed it. The old angry gamer has clearly noticed it, that you sort of do work out what they're going to do now. That triangle of Miggy, Trippier, Bruno. It is starting to become a little bit repetitive, and I just think they need something else to unlock it. And maybe that is Matt Target offering the same sort of service down the left. And it's hard to judge because the defense has played so well. Dan Burn has played so well. It would not be a gripe against him, but I just think, is this the new thing that unlocks sort of a new system in this team?
Do you think, given the formula, something has to change, whether it be personnel, whether it be maybe even formation? We've got Roger saying there's a time for maybe 4-3-3.
I'm not sure whether he'll change the system, but I think certainly the personnel. I think I wouldn't be surprised to see Target come back in. if I'm completely honest, I think Willock might have got injured at the wrong time, because it's hard to see whether he can get back in this team above Longstaff, Joelinton and Bruno, because I think now Maxi, Gordon and Isak are probably going to be rooting for that left midfield position. I don't think we'll see Joelinton push back out wide. So this is what we want, though. We want options, we want depth, we want, ways to change it, and Howe's got that now. So given the form of late and how they've just started to stutter a little bit, maybe not this week, but the following game, I would maybe like to see a couple of changes.
I think Derek thinks we're being too negative, Aaron. Now it's Dan's turn. He says he's been a key figure and the best defence in the league. Look, we're not hating on Dan Burn at all. He's been superb. But what we're doing is, I think if you're looking at the positions and the personnel, the left back with Matt Target coming back to fitness is definitely one of those.
It's up for debate. 100% it is. There's now a couple of positions that are up for debate, and I don't want to be negative. The weekend, can I just say, it was absolutely fantastic. It was fantastic on the Saturday. It was a privilege to be there on the Sunday. This team have done fantastically well, but you can't ignore the fact that they're not scoring goals anymore. They don't look as sharp as they did in attack. They don't look as sharp as they did at the back, and they've got a crucial run of games coming up to make sure that they can, keep this European push on track. So, whether Howe will change it up, I'm not too sure, but I certainly think he's got options there to do if he wants it.
Joe says he can't agree with the Miggy and Maxman comments. They need support when they create. There's no one in the middle at home. We should have two front. And it was interesting on Sunday. There was two chances in the first half quite early on when the ball did flash across the box. And again, you say, well, would Callum Wilson of old be in there? I think actually he may have passed one of them, so it would have been a bit difficult for him to be that quick. But the second one, I think it was, he just wasn't there. And I think, the Callum Wilson of old would have been there. He would have been pouncing because that's what he's good at. And again, it's these moments in big games, as at the outset, decide on big moments where you look back and you think, if only.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, it's Isak's chance to prove now, if he does get in that number 9 position over Wilson, that he can be the sort of poacher that is going to, get on the end of Maxi and Miggy and Trippier's balls in the middle. So as whoever made that comment, I can't see it on the screen, is
Joe there.
Joe. But yeah, so yeah, look, change the personnel up. Maybe it unlocks, that little bit extra from Miggy. Maybe it unlocks that little bit extra from Trippier, who are going to keep their places. But I don't look. Maybe we're being negative in the sense that we're saying what they can improve, but I think there's ways you can change this team to make it better.
And well, you're always striving to improve, aren't you? Because if you stand still, then you risk going back. So I don't think there's anything wrong with always looking to get better. That's how you become the best. Adam says he thinks Wilson needs closer support going forward. He totally agrees with Almiron reverting to type in terms of end product. How about setting up with a 4-2-3-1, defence unchanged, Bruno and Joe in the midfield with Maxi, Isak, Gordon behind Wilson?
I think that team is pretty much spot on, apart from that. Gordon over Miggy's a big call. Miggy in this team knows his role, knows what he's doing.
His work rate,
very balanced.
Almiron's work rate is quite something. I think even though he's not scoring goals, that work rate for the way Newcastle tend to like to play is pretty crucial.
But absolutely, completely. But I think that team is pretty much what we saw Sunday second half. I think we saw it at Fulham as well when Isak came off the bench and played off Callum Wilson. I think Howe is trying that in little flashes. I don't think he's ever started a game with that system yet, but he's clearly thinking that could be a possibility going forward.
It was interesting because he did. I've already mentioned that he did say at the end of the presser that he thought they played quite well together, so it was maybe dropping him a little hint. Stuart says Isak needs a run of games in one position rather than playing different roles each time he plays. A bit of consistency probably would be good as well. Derek's back saying, so change the attack. Now is not the time to panic about the defence. Let's hear then a little bit from Eddie Howe in his press conference. And this is what he had to say just a few moments after full time.
Pleased with how we played. I thought we were really good between both boxes today. But in the boxes is where games are won or lost. And I think today we didn't get the big moments right defensively. And with the chances we did have, we weren't clinical enough and probably didn't create enough for all the ball we had around their box. Yeah, as I sit here now, I've got no regrets with, how we tried to set the team up. Our intent to the game, we wanted to be really brave as we have been all season and try and attack the match and have a right go at Manchester United. It's a strange game because probably low on goal-mouth action for periods of it, but I felt we were really competitive. I can't fault the players' efforts, what they've given me in this game, but it's decided on big moments, and the free kick, we've not defended it well enough, and they're probably the moments we'll look at with regret.
So there was Eddie Howe after the game. You can see, quite understandably down about not winning, but praising his players, says he had no regrets, couldn't fault them, and I think I think he's right. They didn't perform at the very best, but I know people say, "Well, you just spent the last hour bashing most of them," but we haven't. We've been constructive, but they played at a decent enough level. And you can't take positives.
Yeah, you can. And I think the first 30 minutes is certainly a big positive. I thought they were, actually, really on top, and Manchester United just hit them against the run of play. And again in the second half, as we touched on, I thought it was a good performance despite, not looking like they were going to get back into it. They were giving it a good go. So I don't think you can really, yes, we can maybe look at it and say how could have maybe started one or two others in different positions. But I think on the whole, he got the system and especially the changes, I think he got right.
Let's hear then from Kieran Trippier as well. This is what Kieran Trippier had to say after the defeat to Manchester United in the Carabao Cup Final.
Kieran, how was it for you?
Not disappointing, of course. We was coming into this game with high hopes, good mentality to win the game. I thought we started the game unbelievable, especially the first, before they scored, to be honest. But they have players who have been in these moments every year, and for us, it's about learning from these moments, start of our journey. We've got to dust ourselves down now because we've got another huge game on Saturday.
Did it feel like the start of the journey as well? It's taken a long time to get back here, but maybe you can kick on from here?
No, definitely. We've got a strong mentality in this group. We've got a strong togetherness in this group. That comes from the manager. And like I said, this time last year we was fighting relegation. Now we've been in a cup final and fifth in the league. So, we took massive steps. Now it's about believing and carrying on, because that's what we have to do now. We have to accept this disappointment. But the most important thing, we gave a good account of ourselves today. I thought we matched them in every aspect.
Just the goal that was missing, wasn't it?
Of course it is. It's about cup finals, big moments like this. It's about taking your chances. If Max's chance goes in just before that, they score their goals, it's a totally different game. Burnley's chance, but again, it's disappointing, of course.
Fans were amazing inside the ground, outside the ground. I'm sure you've seen the social media and that kind of thing. Obviously, you said you didn't give them what they came for, but they've had an amazing weekend. I think for them, it's felt like a step forward. Have you sort of felt that as well? Yeah,
definitely. And I think most importantly, we know it's difficult times at the moment for everybody. We understand it's not easy to travel all the way down to London. It's expensive, and as players, we understand that. We appreciate them coming out in numbers. And since I arrived, the fans have been unbelievable, home and away, and they deserve huge credit because we certainly feel it on the pitch. They're a massive help. They have been throughout the whole season, and the one thing I will say to the supporters is keep going, keep believing, because we have a team in there who are willing to give everything for the club.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
I mean, the fans don't need any encouragement to keep backing their side. We saw that at full time when the flags came up. Well, even a couple of minutes before the end of the game, the flags came up with the club 2-0 down and no chance of getting back into it, but they were there backing their team as always. Just a couple of points there that Trippier made, and he kind of was alluding to maybe the lack of experience within the dressing room. Do you think when it comes to these big occasions, big moments? And he's right. He is right, because this is the start of the journey.
Yeah, definitely, and it's what I touched on earlier. I think you look in that dressing room. Trippier has been there and done it in finals and Champions League clashes and title clashes. for all Bruno and Joel, they're not fantastic players. They've never been in that position of, cup finals every year and doing that. Manchester United's team absolutely littered with players who have won, every single competition in the game. And I think that showed on Sunday, as we've said. But it's the start of the journey. I think for all that Newcastle United are going to go and start to sign young, hungry, talented players, they could also do with a couple of, Trippier-esque leaders in that dressing room as well, which I'm sure they'll be looking at in the summer as well.
Yeah, as Stuart says, he's really excited for the summer transfer window. And just before we finish off by asking you about Karius, Aaron, there's a big debate going on in the comments here, and we love to see it. All about Isak and Callum Wilson. So let me dive straight in here and read you the comments. So Ian says, "Hello lads, Isak needs to play up front for Callum as well. He's a typical number 9. Whether he's a typical number 9 or not, Callum is not playing well in any area of his game, so needs dropping now." And then Dale says, "Thought Isak played very well in number 10 role. Would like to see Wilson and Isak play together. Wilson offers that target man role and is very good at holding the ball and bringing others into play." But Ian didn't agree. He says Wilson was awful in the number 9 position. No movement, limited pressing, and for me, he looks spent. I don't think he looks spent. I think he's just not on form. Does he need to be taken out for a couple of weeks and just rested and used off the bench? I think what's really interesting actually is that we mentioned this a few weeks ago. Ideally, you would play Isak and Wilson together, but are you potentially thinking, hey, I play them together and one gets injured and one gets suspended? I haven't got another striker.
No, I don't think that would be going through Eddie Howe's head, if I'm completely honest. I think it's an interesting one because I get your point. Does Wilson need a little break out the team? I also get the point of the comments that Wilson and Isak do actually look like they play together. Isak, as we've said, and a lot of the comments have said, looks like he suits that number 10 role. He hasn't played there all the time, but he looks comfortable in it. But then it means you've got to change the shape. You've got to probably drop Longstaff out, which, he's like the engine room of the team. So this is what I'm talking about, though. This is the good, this is the
dilemma.
This is the good dilemmas to have. We want Eddie Howe to have 4 or 5 options that nobody knows what's going to happen. I mean, it's going to keep Pep Guardiola on his toes this week when he tries to set his team up to play. So I like the idea of Wilson and Isak together. At the moment, I'm not too sure because I think the team would be a lot more unbalanced without Longstaff in it. But yeah, certainly I think, as we've touched on earlier, certainly something Howe wants to try later on in games.
Stuart says, "Does Wilson stick around if we sign 1 or 2 new forwards?" I think he does. I think I could see him finishing his career here if he's willing to, maybe in a couple of years' time, accept maybe a lesser role. But I don't see him. I don't necessarily see him being forced out, unless they get a really stupid bid from money wise, in 18 months or so. But yeah, massive. Look, we just need him on form because he's one of the best Premier League strikers if he's on form. So we just need to get back to that level, and fingers crossed that starts against City on Saturday. Loris Karius saying it was all about redemption. I spoke to him afterwards. He was asked about, can you understand where this redemption story's come from? And he said, well, if we'd won the cup, it would have been a good story, but we didn't. And then interestingly, he said, but you never know. We might be back here next year with Newcastle. I might play another one. So he's seemingly not shutting the door on potentially staying at Newcastle longer than the summer.
Yeah, look, I told every man and his dog last week that Newcastle were going to lift the cup and he was going to be here on penalties. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, but I thought personally for him, he had a very good game. Fantastic save for the Weghorst shot. Fantastic to keep Fernandes out at the end. I know I've seen a few people saying he could have done better for the goal, but I think that deflection takes it away from Dunham.
That's really harsh on him.
But I think, every time the ball went anywhere near him, my heart was in my mouth because I really wanted him to have a good game.
That first header by Botman,
yeah,
I tell you what, that was so close to going past him. There was a bit of hesitancy, but he caught it and he felt good. And then he got another one into his arms. And look, because we got back to the hotel and we were working till the early hours with a lovely £7 pint of Guinness. And he turned to me and he said, "I've just watched a highlights reel of Karius in this final, and he's made some crucial saves more than you remembered.
I left the stadium and think, no, he's had a good game, but he hasn't done too much. And as I said, thank you very much to the Newcastle fan that put that lovely compilation together. Because as I've just mentioned, big strong save against Rashford from distance. That Weghorst one was flying in the top corner, and I know the game was at 2-0, and it was just it would have just been a late third goal for Man United, but a very, very good save to stop Fernandes. So yeah, look, as in terms of his long-term future, I think a lot of it depends on Dubravka, but there's nothing to say that he can't be Newcastle's number 2 next season. He's clearly shown something behind the scenes. I thought he was, he had a good game Sunday.
Number 3. I mean, obviously he's going to probably want. I think because he said afterwards, he's shown that he doesn't need to hide away. He can still play at this level. So there seems to be a little bit of a drive there to maybe want to go and find first team football. Yeah. But if it all works out for him and it works out for Newcastle United and Eddie Howe, then clearly you have him in amongst pro, whether it be Dubravka or another second goalkeeper, and then Karius, and then if Gillespie's still about, or someone from the reserves, the youth academy, then he's a good little third choice goalkeeper to have around. But I think he did show today that he could probably still do a job, in a mid-range Premier League side.
And I think he wants that. I think he wants to, desperately, as you've said, he wants to play again. I think the fact he was a free agent when he joined Newcastle, and he's now, enjoyed a very good game on the big stage, he'll be thinking, right, this is now my time to start playing regular football again.
Ian says his distribution is better than Dubravka. He'd have him as Newcastle's number 2. Karius was decent, says Stuart, considering he hasn't played for 2 years. He's on par with Dubravka for me. Both decent shots. That was always potential clanger in their locker. Steve, though, says Dubravka, better keeper all round. He just became one of the scapegoats. Right. Give me 3 positives that you took from Newcastle's performance on Sunday. I haven't told you this before, so I'm putting you on the spot. Let's have 3 positives.
Alexander Isak looks like he's going to be a fantastic addition. He is going to be in the future a really, really good player when he gets completely settled in this team. Number 1. Number 2, even though they're going behind against teams who have spent probably £1 billion in the last 10 years, they're still giving it a very good go. Liverpool last week, Manchester United on Sunday. Number 3, Loris Karius didn't draw a clanger. There we go.
I'll chuck in Joe Linton. I'll chuck in Bruno, looking like a world class player. I'll chuck in another one as well. It won't be 24 years until we're back at Wembley.
Yep. I think that I'll add a 4th one. They've seen what a cup final is like. They've seen the fans flocking to London. They've got that hunger to know that next season when it comes around, you bet the FA Cup and the League Cup, they're going to be taken very, very seriously.
It's time to get the metaphor out that I've been saving. So I think, right, Sunday's final was like getting the keys to your dream house.
You've used this one,
right? And then the memories that you make, with your better half, and you're having kids, and you're having barbecues, and in the summer, those kind of memories you'll take with you. That comes later. That'll be next year's final and the final afterwards. But Sunday was just about you've got the keys. This is yours, and then you go in, you make your improvements and what have you. So that's the metaphor I'm using. Yeah,
couldn't have put it better myself. It was poetry.
And just finally, then we've been nominated as the best sport podcast in the Publisher Podcast Awards, which is fantastic. Up against some big names, including the BBC. But it's the 2nd year in a row we've been nominated for that. So that is great to see. Thank you guys for following us on the podcast. It's down to kind of you guys continually listening to us, which we do appreciate. And secondly, let's just, did you enjoy London?
Absolutely fantastic weekend. Brilliant from start to finish. Absolutely fantastic to see the scenes on the Saturday. And yeah, look, it won't be 24 years till we're back again. I bloody hope it's not, because I had a very, very good time, apart from those £7 Guinnesses. But yeah.
And the 193 stairs at Covent Garden Tube Station.
Yeah, that was a killer.
Which, by the way, on our YouTube channel later today, we will have the travel diary. And within that, you will see a brief footage of me, Aaron and Kieran struggling up the 193 stairs at Covent Garden, which, given he's got one knee, was a particular achievement from yourself, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think my physio will be wondering what the hell I've done when I go back and see him next week, given that I've was put through my paces on Saturday.
Ian says London was class for the weekend. I mean, Trafalgar Square was absolutely superb. Stuart says can only be a good experience to have a cup final. And Sam says, did Andrew really just compare having a kid to having a summer barbecue? No.
You did.
No, I
you
didn't.
did, and I'll be telling Lil.
What I said was, what I meant was, these are the memories, and you're having a kid and lovely, and then you have, your summer barbecue with your family and your kid running around. I shouldn't need to explain the metaphor, Sam, from Newcastle Fans TV. It was a very clear metaphor. Happy memories after getting the keys to your dream house. That's what I meant. Right. Anyway,
put that shovel away.
Goodness me. And we'll finish off on a really positive one. Ian says, we love the podcast. Well done, lads. Thank you very much. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on the podcast. And head over to chroniclelive.co.uk to keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news, including all the reaction to Sunday's final and all the build-up to the game against Manchester City and everything in between. It's been a pleasure, as always. And from me now, enjoy the rest of your week.